Senator from New Jersey.
Madam President, let me thank my colleague, the ranking Democrat, senior Democrat on the Senate Banking and Housing and Urban Affairs Committee, for his passion, his commitment. He's really elevated housing, something that I'm passionate about, within the jurisdiction of the committee. Everybody refers to the committee very often as the Banking Committee, but housing is a critical element of what it does, and he has elevated it, and I really appreciate his passion on behalf of millions of those who rent or who are fortunate enough to own a home but want to keep it, to try to be able to do so. And I would just say to my distinguished chairman of the committee, and I do have highest respect for him, look, overwhelmingly, the CARES package, you know, when you lump in trillions of dollars, but overwhelmingly, that money went for businesses. And of course, I support that. But it went for businesses. It went to sustain businesses. It went to ultimately help small, mid-sized, and even large businesses. It went to sustain sectors of our economy, like the airline industry and others. But what we're talking about goes to the very essence of what it is to have a home. Home is one of the most important American concepts. It is where we're brought to when we are born. It's where we're nurtured while we're young. It's where we're schooled at, where good times and bad times take place, where ultimately, we build a life around our family if we're fortunate to have a home. And then it's, in a pandemic, we've learned that it's also a place to shelter in. So what I come to the floor today is to warn of an impending storm that is brewing, and it's headed our way. You know, when the fund for the PPP, for the business program, ran out, we didn't have regular order and see if the PPP was working well. And no, there was a rush. There was a rush just to put more billions in it, more billions in it. And it's only until we said, wait a minute, this isn't working so well for small and mid-sized businesses, we got to make some reforms. So there was a rush then. There was no regular order. We have a storm that is brewing and headed our way. It'll bring with it enormous financial pain. It will threaten public safety. It will make fighting the pandemic that much harder, and it will set back our nation's economic recovery. If the Senate fails to respond to this looming crisis, Americans will needlessly suffer, families will be displaced, personal fortunes will be wiped out, and the scars will run so deep it could take decades to heal the wounds. As the COVID-19 pandemic took hold, the one saving grace most of us have had, the one place we could take refuge to protect ourselves and our families, was our home. Our leading medical experts all urged us to stay home. If you're sick, stay home. If you have an underlying condition or are immunocompromised, stay home. If you're elderly or otherwise at risk, stay home. If you can, work from home. If you're a student, go online and learn from home. So if we've learned anything from this pandemic, is that staying home can help contain the virus, flatten the curve, and save lives. But what if you don't have a home? What if you don't have a home? As we speak, millions of our fellow Americans are asking themselves that very same question. At a time when COVID-19 cases are spiking across the country, the provisions that we passed in the CARES Act to help renters and homeowners stay in their homes are about to run out. And if we do nothing, we could face a foreclosure and eviction crisis far greater than that which we encountered during the Great Recession. That's the storm on the horizon. Americans shouldn't have to fear being thrown out on the street if they miss their next rent or mortgage payment through really no fault of their own. They shouldn't have to fear losing their greatest personal asset or their one safe place in the middle of a pandemic, further exposing themselves and others to the virus. The Senate can stop that if it wants to. We can make sure that every American has a safe and healthy place to call home. That's why I joined my Democratic colleagues on the Banking Committee in introducing 2 bills last month that will provide assistance to homeowners and renters. The Housing Assistance Fund, led by Senator Reid, provides $75 billion in targeted assistance to keep people in their homes while they search for new employment or wait to get back to work. This money could go towards mortgage payments, utilities, or other support to prevent eviction, delinquency, or foreclosure. The Emergency Rental Assistance and Rental Market Stabilization Act, led by Senator Brown, would provide $100 billion in rental assistance to help families pay rent and help property owners maintain safe and healthy housing. It will help the economic recovery by stabilizing.
Gentlemen will suspend, please. The Senate will be in order. Please take your conversations off the floor. Gentlemen may proceed.
Thank you, Madam President. The Emergency Rental Assistance and Rental Market Stabilization Act, led by Senator Brown, would provide $100 billion in rental assistance to help families pay rent and help property owners maintain safe and healthy housing. It will help the economic recovery by stabilizing the rental market overall. But we also have to empower Americans to make informed financial decisions to help them navigate the maze of lenders, landlords, government agencies to find a sustainable path to stay in their home. We all know there's a housing affordability crisis in this country that jeopardizes the aspirations of millions of Americans who hope to join the middle class. And just as they've borne the brunt of the COVID-19 pandemic, low-income and minority Americans disproportionately suffer during economic turndowns. Now, these provisions that the chairman talked about in the law that we passed to help, which are going to be expiring, to the extent that you know about it, you might invoke it to protect yourself against eviction or mortgage foreclosure. But if you don't know about it, and either the financial institution or your landlord looks the other way, is not following the law, well, then you don't get the protection. That's why I and 19 of my Democratic colleagues introduced a bill on Monday to provide $700 million in housing counseling assistance. Research shows that homeowners who receive housing counseling have better outcomes than those who don't, and that evidence is overwhelming. Their risk of default goes down, they're more likely to see their credit scores rise, and their debt levels fall. In rough times like we're in right now, these borrowers are more likely to get a sustainable mortgage modification and less likely to end up in default. And the benefits of housing counseling flow to the community at large. Because when a family is able to buy a home, pay their mortgage, build equity, and ultimately achieve the American dream, our towns and cities thrive. And during a pandemic, having a safe and affordable place to live could mean the difference between life and death. It's also especially important for senior citizens who are more susceptible to COVID-19. So tomorrow I'll introduce legislation and provide $1.2 billion in aid for older adults living in federally assisted housing. This bill provides additional rental assistance for senior housing, personal protective gear, and staffing to help maintain a healthy community. So, Madam President, the forecasts are in. The storm is coming. The question is, what are we going to do about it? 4th of July is Independence Day. It's nice to have independence from the fear that I will lose the place that I call home. That would be a tremendous gift on the 4th of July. Are we going to help our most vulnerable citizens during this pandemic, or are we going to just watch them suffer, lose everything, and exacerbate this public health crisis? Today is July the 1st. The rent is due, mortgage payments are due, and the Senate's work is due. I remember, and I'll close on this personal anecdote, when I was growing up poor in a tenement in New Jersey, the son of an itinerant carpenter and a seamstress, there wasn't always work, which meant that sometimes paying the rent was a real tough choice. And it was a choice of paying the rent or putting food on the table. I saw the anxiety in my mother's eyes. I saw the fear in my siblings, not knowing whether that apartment in that tenement was something we were going to even be able to keep. That wasn't in a pandemic. That was just in normal times. Imagine in a pandemic, everything you're told is stay home, and there is no place to call home. We can do much better than that. We can do much better than that. Yep, it's July 1st, the rent is due, the mortgage payments are due, the Senate's work is due. Let's pass these bills today and make sure that every American can weather the pandemic in a safe and affordable place to call home. With that, Madam President, I yield the floor.
Morgan?
I would just